Hey, welcome back. We're at Unit 9.2, Factoring Quadratic Trinomials. Okay, so today we're going to bring together the first two lessons and put them together. So there's nothing really, well, I guess, nothing really different today, but we're just going to bring them together. So if you remember, so again, all of our problems that we're going to be working on are going to be in standard form. So if you look at all of these examples that we're going to go over, they're all in standard form. That means we have the highest exponent, then the next, and then we have a constant. All right, so let's go back a bit. We did something like this, I think, in our last lesson, but we'll go over that again. So if we wanted to distribute two binomials, what we did is one way we could do it is using a box method, okay? Or you could do foiling. So if we were to FOIL, we'd get 8x squared, and then we'd multiply to the next one like that, and we'd get a positive 4x. And then we'd multiply the inside terms, we'd get a negative 2x. And then we would get a negative 1. So again, it's all just multiplication, multiplying everything together. But as you notice, we end up having 4 terms. And that's just what we were covering last time. So in our last lesson, all of our problems had 4 terms. And we were able to either do factoring by grouping, we would cut it in half and would find the two things or the things that would go into them, or we used like a box method like we did over here, okay, which kind of keeps it organized. You just plug in all the 4 terms into a box and we just factor out 4 times, and that's what you get in our parentheses. So either way, that's what we did in our last class, okay. So the difference now, all of our problems for our last lesson, we had 4 terms. But typically, if we were to distribute, we would combine like terms, and we'd end up getting 8x squared plus 2x minus 1. So those two things come and give us the middle term. So today what we're going to be covering is going that last step. So we're going to take a quadratic with 3 terms, and we're going to break that middle term into 2 separate terms so that we could do grouping. All right? And I'll explain to you how we do that. Okay? So I think it's basically the same thing I said here. You could read that if you'd like to. So yeah, what we're doing is we're going to uncombine those 2 terms. All right? And again, this what we're covering today that's kind of new. It doesn't matter what method you decide to use. So what you're going to do, and we can write steps on that, maybe I'll do that in a moment, but what we're going to do is we need to multiply our first and last term, okay? And oftentimes I will just call this glasses because it kind of looks like those cool aviator glasses, okay? So we want to multiply the first and last term. And more specifically, we need to multiply the term that has the x squared and the constant, okay? So if we multiply those together, we end up getting 8x squared, or negative 8x squared, okay? So if we multiply those together, that gives us a negative 8x squared, right? And then we need to find 2 things that multiply to give us that negative 8, and add to give us the middle term, okay? So in effect, this is just the way that I write it down. There's different ways people do it. Sometimes people do like a little x and they'll put like the negative 8 and a 2 and try and find those things. Either way, whatever way you like to write it down, that's great. But we want to find the things that two things that multiply to give us 8. This might look kind of like what we did on our first lesson, something that multiplies to give us a negative 8 and adds to give us a 2. All right? So we can think about that, how we can do that. Well, if you're stuck, you can always write down your factor pairs, 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. So which of those could give us a 2? Well, it would have to be the 2 and the 4, and one of them needs to be negative, right? So maybe like 4x minus 2x, right? So 4x minus 2x gives us that middle term that we need. And if we multiply those together, that does give us a negative 8x squared. So this kind of is what we kind of covered in our 9.0. Okay? All right, so now we found a way to break this middle term. Okay, we know that 4x minus 2x is the same as 2x. And then we still have our 8x squared and our minus 1. So now we did kind of the second, or that part where we take our trinomial and we write it into where we have 4 terms. Okay. And now that we have 4 terms, we can do what we did in our last lesson. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that over here so I have some more room. Okay, and I'll just erase that. Okay, all right, so now we're going to do the same thing that we did before. So if you want to use the box method, then we would take that 8x squared and we'd do a 4x and a negative 2x and a negative 1. And then we just need to take out the greatest common factor for each row and column. So we'll do this one first. Looks like we could take out a 4x. We take out from here, we could take a leading negative and a 1. And then for the columns, looks like we could take out a 2x. And then we could take out, looks like a 1 as well, again. But it'll be a positive because we have a leading positive. We don't have a leading negative. And then those are our 2 parentheses. So we've got 4x minus 1. And we've got 2x plus 1. Okay. And we'll just use that sign. If it's positive, we'll do plus 1. Okay. Or if you choose to do the other method, we'll just cut that in half. We'll take out the greatest common factor for the left side, which is a 4x, and then we need to divide everything by 4x. That would leave us with 2, and one of the x's would cancel, so 2x. And then on the second term, 4 divided by 4, that gives you 1, and the x's would cancel. And then we need to do the right side, so we have a leading negative, so we take out a negative 2, or not a negative 2, sorry, a negative 1. So we divide everything by a negative 1, and that would leave us with 2x plus 1. If you notice again, what's in those 2 parentheses have got to be the same, and they are. And just like we took an x out from both of these terms, we can do the same. We can take that out in the front, 2x plus 1, and then we write down what's left behind was the 4x minus 1. Okay. Again, you notice they're the same. Either way, you get the same thing. Okay, so again, well, maybe we'll write down some steps. So first, what we need to do is always, again, do I have that on there? I don't think I do yet, okay? Always greatest common factor first. If there is a greatest common factor for the 3 terms that we start with, then we should take it out, okay? Second, we want to multiply, well, maybe I'll write down glasses, okay? We'll multiply the first term and last, okay? And again, specifically, it's going to be, like if we talk about standard form, oh, we're supposed to write that here, that's what I meant to do, okay? is ax squared plus bx plus c. This is what we would call a quadratic in standard form, where a, b, and c are just numbers. So when I say the first term and last term, basically we need to multiply ax squared, and we'll multiply it by whatever c is. Okay, so that's your first, like your ax squared, and your c, your constant. Okay. So we need to multiply the first and last term, and then we need to do what we called before was the product and sum game. Okay, we need to find the two things that make that work. Okay, so two things that multiply to give us that, and add. So we will do multiply to and add to BC or BX, the middle term. So again, if we write down that standard form that we have here, that's our middle term is BX. Okay. And then once we find those two things, we'll substitute the two numbers, or two things, in for the middle term. Okay, and then we would do grouping. So that was 9.1. Okay, so let's do a couple more together. You're welcome to pause anytime. These ones I have, like the first four, there's not a greatest common factor, and then for these ones, there is. So I kind of have those separate for here. If you want to skip down to there, if you need some practice with that, then just go to that point. Okay, I probably won't go over all of these. All right, so again, first step, greatest common factor, there isn't, so we'd go straight into doing glasses. So multiply those together, that gives us a negative 12 x squared, and we need to find two things that multiply to give us negative 12 and add to give us 11x. So again, that's our middle term. So if you're stuck, again, write down your factor pairs for 12, 1 and 12. And it looks like that would do it, actually. So maybe like a positive 12x and a negative 1x. So that would give us 11x. And if we multiply those together, it would give us the negative 12x squared. So now we found our middle term. And I'm going to start with the box method this time. So I'm going to have my 3x squared. I guess maybe I should rewrite this here. Do it here, 3x squared, and then this is the two things that we'll plug in, so plus 12x minus 1x, and again, 12x minus 1x is 11x, so we haven't changed anything, and then we have our minus 4 from here. Alright, so we'll plug those four things in, we get a 12x and a minus 1x, and a negative 4. And we'll take out those greatest common factors. So for, maybe we'll do the top one first. Oops. We could take out a 3x. From here, it looks like we could take out a negative 1. From here, we could take out an x. And then between these two, we could factor out a 4. Positive 4. So those are our two parentheses, x plus 4. And 3x minus 1. Okay? We'll do another one here. We'll just do grouping, where we cut it in half. So again, we still need to find the two things that multiply and add. So two things that multiply to give us a negative 30a squared. So again, we do glasses. We multiply the first and last term. That gives us the negative 30. And then we need to find the two things that multiply to that and add to give us that middle term, the negative 13a. So again, we can write down factor pairs for 30. We could do 1 and 30. Looks like that couldn't give it to you. And again, since when we multiply them, they give us a negative. One of them has to be a positive and one has to be a negative. So, and then we could do 2 and 15. Looks like that could work. So maybe negative 15a plus 2a. That gives us the negative 13a. And if we multiplied those together, that would give us the negative 30. So then we'll write down, making our equation be a 4-term polynomial. Okay, so again, we just put that and replaced the middle term. Haven't changed it at all. And then we can do grouping. So for the left side, we take out the greatest common factor. It looks like it's a 5a. And then we have to divide everything by 5a. So 5 over 5 gives you 1. And we have 2 a's, and we take away 1. That leaves us with 1a. So 1a. And then negative 15 divided by 5 gives you a negative 3. And those a's cancel. On the right side, the greatest common factor, it looks like we could take out a 2. And so that means we need to divide everything by 2. And that leaves us with a, or 1a, minus 3. And you notice again that they're the same, so we can factor those out. So that's going to be one of our parentheses. Will be 1a, or just a, minus 3. And then what's left goes in the other parentheses. So 5a plus 2. All right, okay. If you're interested in having more videos for these two, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email and I could make another video. I just want to do a couple of these and then we'll be all done. All right, so again, I think we kind of talked about this already, so I think I kind of already spilled the beans. But if there's a greatest common factor, then we should take it out first. So here we do have a greatest common factor. It looks like we could divide all of these by 2. So if that's your greatest common factor and we take it out, we're going to make sure we leave it at the end. So this is why I'm putting these 2 parentheses and a 2 in the front, because we need to make sure we don't forget that. So here we'd have 2n squared minus 7n minus 4. Okay, so now it's fully factored. We took out that 2, and now we can use, we have to find the 2 things that multiply and add. So we'll do glasses. That gives us a negative 8n squared, and adds to give us the negative 7n. So things that can multiply to give us 8 is 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. And it looks like 1 and 8 would make that work. You just make sure you check your signs. So we need to do a negative 8n and a positive 1n. That would give us the negative 7. And if we multiply it, make sure you always check and make sure that multiplies all right. So negative 8 times 1 gives you the negative 8. So if we want to do grouping, we have our 2n squared minus 7n, but that 7n is now negative 8n plus 1n minus 4. Sorry if I sound a little tired. It's the end of the day and it's Friday, so just be patient with me. All right, so if we do grouping, we can do 2n squared minus 8n plus 1n and a negative 4. So now we look and find those greatest common factors. So for the first row, we could take out a 2 and an n. For this row, we could take out a 1, looks like. For the column, since I don't really have room on the top, I'm going to do it on the bottom. So we could take out a negative 4. And for this, we could take out an n. So those are our 2 parentheses, will be 2n positive 1 and n minus 4. Okay, and then I'll do another for b using the other method. So again, feel free to pause and give this a try if you want to make sure you're doing it well, or at least skip to the end so you can make sure you check it, okay? All right, looks like greatest common factor. So this one's tricky. This one, our greatest common factor is a negative because we have a leading negative. We can't divide 3 and 11 and 4 by anything, but we can take out a negative, and we should, or else you run into issues. So we take out that negative, we'll divide everything by a negative, or a -1 if you wanted to. A -1 and a -1. So it's just going to change all the signs. So 3x squared plus 11x minus 4. Okay, so at the end we'll have a negative and we'll have 2 parentheses. So I don't forget that. All right, and then we will need to do glasses. Find the 2 things that multiply and add. So need to multiply to give us a -12x squared and add to give us 11x. So we could write down factor pairs for 12. 1 and 12. Looks like that would work. So maybe 12x minus 1x. That gives us 11x, and if we multiply them, it gives us a -12. So we need to substitute that in for the middle term. So 3x squared plus 12x minus 1x. And again, I'm just trying to make sure you understand that what we plugged in is the same thing. That's still 11x. We haven't changed anything. We just broke it up. We unreduced or simplified. Okay? We uncombined like terms. And then we have a -4. So we cut it in half. Looks like we could take out a 3x. The 3's would cancel. We have 2 x's, take away 1, that leaves us with 1x. Yeah, 12 divided by 3 is a +4, and those x's would cancel. And for the right side, we have a leading negative. So again, you always have to take something out. So you have to take out something, like a -1. And that will leave us with x, positive x, and a +4. So that means we got it right, because the parentheses are the same. We can factor those out. And then everything else stays in, or goes in the other parentheses. So 3x minus 1. Okay, well that's about it. Here's some other examples. If you're interested, just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to do some more, or we could do a Google Meet if you need to. All right, so again, what do you look for first when you factor? The greatest common factor, always.